I'm going to tell you how I walked into my own house and found my new wife calmly setting up my little girl's funeral, while my daughter was still upstairs alive, and how everyone thought I was too busy, too rich, too broken to notice, until it was almost too late. It started on one of those nights people think prove you've moved on. Big press event in downtown Seattle, cameras everywhere, my name on a giant screen, while I introduced the Amelia Fund, the charity in honor of my late wife. I was saying all the right words about hope, and next to me stood Veronica in an emerald dress, my new wife, perfect smile, her hand on my arm like she'd always been there. A reporter shouted, "Feels good to be in love again, right?" And before I could answer, she laughed and said, "He's learning how to live again." And the crowd loved it, and I did what I did best back then. Smiled and swallowed the knot in my chest. On the drive home, I stared out at the city lights and thought about how Amelia had designed our house to feel like a hug, warm lamps, half-burned cookies, crayons everywhere, and how lately it looked like a showroom. James, my driver for 10 years, caught my eyes in the mirror, like he wanted to speak, then looked away. Veronica sighed, still scrolling her phone. "We really should brighten the house, take down those heavy drapes and old pictures. It's time." And I knew exactly which picture she meant, but I let it slide. When we walked in, Martha, our housekeeper of 20 years, waited with that careful look she gets when something is wrong. But Veronica breezed past her. "Tomorrow, change the drapes and take down that portrait in the hallway. We need room for new memories." And Martha's eyes brushed Amelia's face on the wall, then moved to me, and I pretended not to see. Then Abby came running in socks, clutching a drawing. "Dad!" She launched into my arms, light as ever, paper smudged with color. "I drew Mom in the garden," she whispered, and the air shifted. Veronica's smile tightened for a heartbeat before she said, "That's sweet, honey. Next time we'll draw all of us together." And I told myself I was overreacting. That night I was packing for a 2-week trip to London. To save a deal the board swore couldn't wait, and Veronica sat at the vanity, taking off her earrings, watching me in the mirror. "Leaving again," she said, not loud, just heavy, and I sat beside her. "I need you to look after Abby. She trusts you," and she turned with soft eyes. Of course, I love her. We're a family, and I chose to believe her, because if I didn't, everything I'd built since Amelia died would crack. At sunrise, I hugged Abby at the gate, promised, 2 weeks, text me your art, and she nodded like my word was gravity. What happened next, I pieced together later, but it sits on me like I watched it. The day I left, Veronica walked into Abby's room and announced, "We're refreshing this, sweetheart." And by afternoon, the mural Amelia painted was gone, toys in boxes, shelves bare. When Abby came home and saw it, she asked, "Where's my room?" And Veronica smiled small. "You'll sleep in the attic for now. It's temporary big girl space." And that attic was narrow and drafty, but Abby carried her pencils up without arguing, because she didn't want to be more trouble. Martha followed and whispered, "Ma'am, she loves that room, Mr. Ethan." And Veronica cut her off. "You work for me, do as I say." And for the first time, Martha felt afraid of her. Bruce arrived as security, but his real job was blocking the attic stairs, repeating "ladies' orders" whenever Martha tried to bring food. Veronica told people a doctor had said Abby needed rest and isolation. No doctor I hired had said anything. Abby sat under that slanted ceiling, writing in her notebook lines like, "The house is big, but I feel small. And Mom, if you can hear me, tell Dad to come home." Downstairs, Veronica was in my office, going through files on long calls with Marcus Hale, a guy I'd fired for crooked numbers. Martha overheard his name, saw drafts of power of attorney. With my name, saw a receipt for a child memorial service, and felt her blood run cold. Every email she tried to send me bounced. So one night she printed what she could, wrote a shaky letter, stuffed it, and the copies in an envelope, and walked it to the mailbox in the dark, hoping it would reach me. 12 days later, I was alone in a London hotel room, one signature away from the biggest contract of my career, when my assistant slid an unmarked envelope toward me, Virginia postmark. Inside the funeral receipt, Marcus's card, a blurry photo of Veronica and Marcus in our backyard, passing a file with my company logo. I called the house. No answer. Called Veronica. Voicemail. Called the landline. Nothing. Tried Martha, disconnected. I logged into our system and saw logins from our home IP under my name, into restricted folders, Marcus listed as temporary advisor, approved by E. Ward. You know that feeling when every little red flag you ignored lines up into one clear message. My team was waiting with cameras and contracts. I said, "Tell them the signing is postponed." Walked out, called my pilot. "We're going home now." When I stepped into the house, the first thing that hit me was the cold smell of lilies, rows of them. On a table in the foyer, black cloth, a guest book, a sign that read, "Memorial Service for Abby Ward," and a white urn. For a second, I thought I was too late. Then I heard Veronica in the next room's steady voice. "Yes, Bruce, the funeral home will arrive before noon. Make sure everything is perfect." Like this was normal. I didn't answer her. I ran upstairs. Abby's old room was locked from the outside. I drove my shoulder into it until it split. Inside, it smelled of stale air and medicine. Abby was curled on the bed, pale eyes half open, surrounded by bottles and untouched water. "Dad," she whispered, and I picked her up and felt how wrong all of this was. Veronica appeared in the doorway. "Ethan, I was going to call. The doctor said she was failing. And I cut her off. "Name the doctor." And she had nothing. I called our real pediatrician on speaker. He got there fast, checked. Abby looked at the room and said, "She's weak from stress and lack of care, not terminal. There is no medical justification." Then he looked at Veronica, and she looked anywhere but back. I fired Bruce on the spot, took his keys, told Martha, "No one locks that door again." That night, Abby slept in my room, Martha sat guard, and I opened my office safe. New scratches on the lock files shuffled and a USB drive taped under a shelf. On it, transfers from my accounts to a shell tied to Marcus forged approvals draft documents, giving Veronica control in case of family crisis. I called Parker. My lawyer told him to start a quiet audit freeze. Anything dirty, tell no one. I called James. If Veronica goes out tomorrow, follow her, take pictures. The next morning, she walked in like nothing, said, "I have meetings with the attorneys about restructuring for us." And I just nodded. James tailed her to a rundown lot, watched her hand Marcus a folder with my company seal, sent me the photos. That night in Parker's office, we laid out the drive, the receipts, the letter, the photos. Parker said, "This is fraud and conspiracy, and whatever she staged with Abby, we'll finish it." And right then, Veronica stormed in out of the rain, eyes wild. "You spied on me," she snapped. "After everything I've done for you." I said, "You isolated my kid, forged my name, and set up her funeral while she was alive. That's what you did." She shot back that I never saw her, that I loved a ghost, that Marcus said, if they controlled the money, I would finally need her. Yeah, that actually came out of her mouth. Parker told her, "Marcus is already exposed. If you cooperate now, hand over originals messages, sign a statement, we can show you were used instead of leading this." She looked at me like I might save her. "If I tell the truth, will you forgive me?" she asked. I told her, "The only thing I care about is Abby being safe. You decide." After a long second, she set down a portfolio, gave up the originals, and signed. Almost on cue, Parker's phone buzzed. Marcus picked up, leaving the state with forged documents in his car. The investigators came, took what they needed, and the case unfolded from there. Headlines called me the father who exposed his own wife. Truth is, the bravest people in this story are a little girl who held on a housekeeper who spoke up and a driver who didn't stay blind. I stepped away from the CEO seat, turned that mansion into Morning Haven, a place where kids who've been through their own storms can sleep without wondering what's being planned downstairs. Martha runs it, James keeps it moving. Abby paints in the garden under the maple tree her mom planted. In the hall hangs her painting of a doorway cracked open with light pouring through a man holding a little girl's hand signed, "For Dad who came home." I keep Martha's letter framed above my desk to remind me what happens when you finally listen. As for Veronica and Marcus, the court gave them their sentences, and I didn't go watch. I stayed where I should have been all along, with my daughter making sure nobody writes her ending but her. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think jealousy and feeling second best explain anything she did? Or is that just cruelty dressed up as hurt? If you were in my place, would you have pushed for the harshest punishment or walked away to rebuild? And have you ever seen someone use grief money or the title of step-parent as a weapon like that? Tell me in the comments who you stand with in this story. Abby Martha James, or the father who finally opened his eyes. And if any of this feels familiar, share it because your story might be the warning that saves someone else's child.